What's going on, everybody? This is Jeremy from USARK, and I'm super stoked to be talking with my buddy Tony from Revision Reptiles. Tony, what's going on, man?
How's it going? How's it going? Thanks again for having me.
Heck yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. So listen, for people who might not know you, man, what got you started into reptiles?
Pretty common story with most people. Started at a young age, kind of continued into that. Mine was more, I wasn't allowed to have them for the longest time. And then when I got out on my own, it kind of just, well, now I don't have necessarily the rules. So it kind of snowballed into one after another. And then having pairs, it kind of was, you accept that if you have pairs and you're successful, at least with keeping them pretty well, and you keep them together on occasion, one plus one will equal multiples. So that kind of snowballed and kind of brought it into the where I'm at today and just with what I work with.
Heck yeah, man. I dig it. I dig it. So for the people who do know you, definitely know that you've got some really cool animals and some species that aren't really commonly kept. So elephant trunk snakes and yellow anacondas being two of those species, man. What drew you to those species?
Yellow anacondas was an odd start, just as an interest in a larger snake. They were very uncommon, very unknown, really. So that kind of drew me into the interest of them. You knew you had the common, and a lot of people know the common conception or idea of the anaconda in general, and then finding the yellow anaconda, that was just kind of intriguing because there's nothing and no information about it. So it kind of just drew me into that area. And then the elephant trunk snakes was I was introduced with failure, and that was kind of one of those. These are very interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't have early success with it, so it was one of those. Okay, now I'm kind of very driven to understand and kind of work with them a little bit more, and just found the hands-off approach that required in comparison to your normal snakes and your terrestrial. Um, the hands-off approach really just drew a lot more interest because it forced the observation side.
Yeah, which that's very interesting because I feel certainly the majority of people want to be holding and and touching and doing all that stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting to have a species that's more like, nah, just look at me, bro. Just
It does definitely drive a different interest, and it gets you thinking and kind of observing just your other snakes also a little bit more rather than getting as close because it's really easy to go hands on and just make that judgment when you get instantly hands on
yeah,
versus that forced to be watching and kind of observing and learning. Are things going right? Are they going wrong? How's the animal reacting? That kind of just transition and helped on both sides.
heck yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's definitely a lot of keepers, especially seeming like keepers that have been doing it for an extended period of time, really talk about listening to your animal and really paying attention to your animal. And I feel like for the majority of people that really do dive into the hands-on approach for most of the other species that exist, there almost has to be like that maturing process over a period of time of just like, okay, I don't need to hold it every day and I can just enjoy it in its space. But yeah, man, to dive right into the species that's just like, don't touch it. Just leave it alone is
Yeah.
definitely a different approach. And I know for me working with a lot of arboreal stuff over the years, like it's a very similar setup with a lot of the arboreal species is like they don't always want to be messed with. It's okay to do it to inspect them if you need to, take a look at something, but for the most part, just leave them alone and enjoy them. So dealing with a species that's very much hands off, and also not really commonly worked with has got to pose a bunch of challenges just to try to even know what you should or should be looking out for. So how did you kind of navigate that understanding of husbandry and animal behavior?
Well, I'm still navigating that, so I will not. I'll caution that with this. It's still a learning process every day.
For sure.
Overall, the start of it really was just starting with everything available. Of course, starting with the importers that are bringing them in,
Mhm.
what kind of conditions they're coming from, what kind of care they at the different areas, the farms and the staging areas, what kind of conditions they're keeping them at, what are the recommended conditions because they're get the importers, the various shops are getting them in at different times and housing them. So
Mhm.
starting with just the general what's available and what knowledge they're willing to pass on, and then standing back again and observing a lot of that. So
Yeah.
um, a lot of the care sheets are focusing on a lot of the various micro the minute levels of watch this, watch this, watch this,
Mhm.
And when you're doing that in an ecosystem, especially an aquarium setup, it fluctuates quite a bit. I found that I was micro tweaking and micro managing, and that was causing more stress kind of situations. So starting with the care sheets and then kind of evolving into okay, this is set up. This is the ideal of what everything says. Now sit back and watch what things we really matter and what don't matter, how the animal's reacting to those things.
Right.
And it's kind of just evolved from there and continued to evolve from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting because taking what information exists and then you kind of have to trudge through the weeds a little bit and just figure what's anecdotal and what's actually important. Yeah, that's very interesting for sure. Versus anacondas that's just like feed me.
Pretty straightforward. Give me some food, keep me nice and warm, and give me lots of water just to kind of bathe in.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine that's if you're going to work with species like elephant trunk snakes, you probably want to have some very easy species so that you're kind of balancing your own stress levels out.
Yeah, in a sense. It's that it wasn't that I had one before the other, but yeah, they tend to kind of bounce off of each other. A lot of people in the reptile side get that point where you get burnout a little bit, or you feel kind of you get hit pretty hard, and you struggle with getting past it. The
Yeah,
two opposites kind of play that nice game of prevention for the burnout side. Here, I want that hands-on approach or that hands-on. I need to handle all the time, or get work with and kind of watch it, or there's the hey, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the view.
yeah.